Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Field, the official podcast of the Drum Major Leadership Academy. I'll be your host for today. My name is Andy Fassbender. I'm actually the producer for Beyond the Field. I've been in every single episode in the background, but tonight I'm in the hot seat. I'm here with Kelley Powell, Sarah Gallardo, and Jack Murphy, and we are here tonight to talk about conflict resolution. A little more about myself. I marched 3 years with Legends Drum Bugle Corps from Kalamazoo, Michigan. I was assistant drum major to Jack Murphy for one of those years, for my last year there. And then I was drum major in my high school marching band, and then I, hold various managerial roles at various jobs I've had. Kelley, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hey folks, my name is Kelley Powell. I'm one of the DMLA instructors and a curriculum coordinator for education and leadership. I am the incoming director of bands at West Oak High School in Westminster, South Carolina. I recently graduated from the University of South Carolina with a degree in choral and instrumental music education, where I was served as drum major for 2 years of the Carolina band. I also attended Waubonsee Valley High School in Illinois, where I served as drum major for 2 other years. Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Sarah Gallardo. I just finished up my junior year at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I major in exercise and sports science with minors in music and coaching education. I'm in the marching band. I play trumpet, but I was lucky to be selected as a drum major for the next season. Um, I was a drum major in high school for 2 years. I was with Carolina Gold Drum and Bugle Corps for 3 years, and now I'm a rehearsal assistant for the Bluecoats. And last but not least, Jack.
Hey y'all, I'm Jack Murphy. I am the DMLA Relations Assistant, and I am also a conducting instructor here at Drum Major Leadership Academy. I currently just finished my 4th year at Western Michigan University, where I am the drum major of the marching band. Going into my 3rd year of that, I played trumpet before. I am also the drum major at Legends Drum and Bugle Corps, where I marched brass and field conductor before becoming drum major. I also served as drum major in high school, and I teach the visual caption at a local high school here in Michigan. Back to you, Andy.
Yeah, Jack's really Jack's really a all around kind of player. He's got many things going on all the time. I totally forgot to mention. I just finished my 3rd year at Ohio State University in Columbus, Ohio, and I'm also an instructor for DMLA, and I'm also on the marketing team. So that's really my true complete bio. I wanted to keep you all in suspense. Um, so here we are. Tonight we're talking about conflict resolution, and I think everybody in in this episode tonight can definitely agree that we all wish we would have gotten a little refresher or like a crash course in conflict resolution before our first time having to actually utilize conflict resolution skills. I definitely had some growing pains in high school and in DCI, as I'm sure you can all relate, Kelley, in college. And now even going into a band director, now you're at a whole nother level. um, so I think it's important to just let's just start out all us four. There's tons of different tools and methods and ways to converse with others about conflict resolution, and then ways that we can actually resolve conflict, as it's arising, whether you're leading members, whether it's within your drum major team, whether it's between yourself and even, someone higher than you, your admin team or your director. Um, I'll start off. I would love to go down the line and just talk about different tools or methods that we all have to de-escalate, or things you have in your arsenal to resolve conflicts, I guess, in marching band and beyond. Me personally, just a hard thing for me to learn right up front was you need to make sure that you're up to snuff on everything that has happened within a conflict. So it can be really easy, especially when you're a newer leader, to just someone comes up to you all flustered. Oh, so John was over there and he knocked over my jug, and then he said he didn't like my glasses, and and that all may be well and true, but maybe the person who's babbling to you right now was doing like way like worse stuff to the person who instigated the conflict. And it's very, very unforgiving in the eyes of the people who you are, um, uh, I guess, leading, if you do not have the facts, because it makes you seem like you're ill-informed, and then people may believe that you're not a good conflict resolver in the future, and then they'll let conflict build up and blow up in your face. And that can be really difficult. And even if you have very high respect among the people you're leading, um, bungling even a very like simple conflict because you didn't take the time to learn the true story that's going on all sides can be pretty catastrophic in terms of relation between you and your members. What else? What other tools do we have to deal with conflict resolution?
I think it's important to note that um, if you as a leader are serving as the mediator of a conflict that's happening like outside of you, like two other parties not involving you, each party, or two or more sometimes, but each party has their own view of what really happened, and those, like, your perception as a person who's involved in the conflict, your perception of what happened is going to be influenced by your emotions. So it's likely that neither side can actually tell you what actually happened, because perception is influenced by like your emotions and like what maybe you had a terrible breakfast that day, or maybe you failed a math test earlier. And so you're probably, if you're serving as the mediator, you're probably never actually going to hear the true side of what actually happened, because most of the parties are just going to have a bias on that. So I think if you're serving that mediator role, your job is to help the parties speak openly to each other and hear each other's point of view, because their middle ground is going to be somewhere in the middle of where the two conflicting parties are. But I don't know if it's, unless you actually saw what happened, it can be really difficult for the mediator to say, oh, this person's right, or oh, this person's wrong, unless you like really have the facts. So sometimes you might actually have the facts, like you might have like seen it, or a director might have come to you and say like, oh, I saw this situation, can you help like solve this conflict? But it's really important to say that like I think the best place to begin with conflict resolution is to forget about someone being right and someone being wrong, for most scenarios, because everyone, like I said, everyone's going to have their own perception about what happened in that thing that's based on, their own biases and their own values and beliefs. So I always think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think just like getting the perspective, because everyone does kind of have their bias, so perspective is super important. Getting that conversation started. I know just like a conflict, and it doesn't even have to be marching arts. It can be at work, at school, anywhere in life. Um, Trying to mediate, you can get a story from one side and then get another story from another side. But I think if possible, it is so important to sit both parties down together and mediate with both of them at the same time. A few years ago, this organization I was a part of on the drum major team, two drum majors weren't getting along. And then at one point during rehearsal, these two drum majors were giving each other the silent treatment. And you can talk to them individually and they're going to give you a different story. But later that night, we sat both of them down and just had the conversation of what was wrong and how can we fix this. And once we got them talking, and really as the mediator, you don't really have to talk, you just have to listen and get the conversation started. Once they started going, they kind of got that perspective of, oh, I didn't even realize you were interpreting this that way, or I didn't know you felt this way about that. And after that conversation, things helped tremendously. So I think not only like you getting both perspectives, but them trying to get them to get the perspective from one another is so important.
Going off of that, I think something that was really great about that was that you waited till after the rehearsal and then got them where it was just like, I assume, the three of you. And it's so important to know when it's appropriate to discuss these things, whether it's a group setting, whether it's one on one, whether it's like you and the other parties. It's it's like because there's a time and place for discussing these things, and if you don't want to have this like hashing out in front of the band when there's miscommunication. Um, and then another thing that I think is super important is that especially when you are the one involved in the conflict, that you don't make it personal. It's um, you want to I believe that you should show care in like your words, your actions, and if they know that you care about them and that you're trying to help, um, and it's not about you did a wrong thing and so we're trying to punish you, that things will go by smoother, as well as like just being respectful of each other. Yeah,
I think the best way to not make it personal is to not it's to like look for a root cause instead of a root person, because if you diminish that person's like who they are to what happened with whatever conflict happened, then that doesn't take into account like I was saying before, like what happened to that person earlier that day, or like how, or like other things that might be going on in their lives. And it's so important to recognize, I think, especially in the high school setting and college too, that people have lives outside of band. You know, when you're doing the drum corps thing, it's like all you're doing all the time. So I think there's some other considerations there. But with high school, like people, band might not be like their thing that they do all the time. Like and that doesn't mean that they deserve any less value or that they're any less important to the band ensemble and to what you do on the field. So instead of just like saying that like, oh, it's this person's fault, saying like, oh, like it was something that happened to them that day, or maybe it's this misconception that they had. It's not like the person's fault necessarily. And I think that that's really great, even when you are like reflecting on maybe something that you might have messed up on. It's a good way to like not beat up yourself, saying like, oh, like I'm sorry, I was having a bad day. And it's not as an excuse, but it's, you have to take into account the context of whatever was going on with the person who like might have made a mistake or done something kind of unintentional. So I think I love that you said don't make it personal, Sarah, and I think that's something we need to take into ourselves when we don't act or perform in a way that we want to, and we're kind of at conflict with who we are trying to be too. So there's lots of good things you can take into account, even in that you can use as your own, as a part of your own self-reflection, which is something we have to do a lot as drum majors, because sometimes we don't get feedback until it's when we've messed up or when the band falls apart. So self-reflection and setting your own goals is really important for drum majors, but at the same time you have to be kind to yourself and understand where those things come from, and then that can translate to you being kind to understanding where others are coming from, and that just makes you a better mediator and a better leader too.
I completely agree. I always try and try to encourage others to always assume the best intent, like good intentions rather, um, because people normally don't do anything just for like to be hateful. There's normally a reason behind it, and like you said earlier, if you can get to the root of the problem, like it should work out, or at least get into the process of working out.
Yeah, I mean, all kind of a similar conversation, but with varying nuance, and it really, as much as we're going over here, there's even, still, even within this one topic, like, I mean, for people listening, like all four of us, we could talk about this for like 3 hours, let alone 40 minutes. It's a learning process. And just one more thing to add on to what, you know, this whole topic is just like when we're talking about removing bias from what's going on, be sure you remove also, this is really hard in high school too. Be sure you're removing bias from your friends. Just because someone is your friend doesn't mean that, like, I'm talking like even like your best friend, like they can be in the wrong in a situation. So if you go through the facts and they are part of the cause of the problem and you need to have a serious discussion with them, utilize all these tools, separate, be sure you're being very clear, I don't not like you anymore. This is my job. This is part of what I signed up for, to have this conversation with you. Afterwards, let's go get ice cream. Let's it doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Um, and like that is just something. Kelley kind of talked about this a little, like something that I feel like a lot of young people, particularly today, struggle with. I struggled with it, and I don't want to speak for the other three of you, but I'm sure you have struggled with this. Is like being vulnerable enough to like admit that you were wrong or you were incorrect, and letting like failure be a good teacher. And I know that's like a really cliche thing. I'm sure some of you have heard that plenty of times, but as all of us I'm sure can attest, like it's just true. Like it is like for people who are listening, like everyone's smiling right now, like that it's like you are going to fall flat on your face like so many times in this within this journey. And it really just emphasizes what Kelley was saying earlier. Like you have to be willing to apologize. Like you have to be like that is only going to strengthen your ensemble's opinion of you, whether it's an ensemble in marching band, whether it's anywhere, whether you're a manager at Subway, like your team, whatever team that you are pulling for, they don't need you to be right all the time. They need you to be willing to say that you were wrong if you were wrong, and they need you to learn from that. Because just think about the expectations you put on them. You're in DCI, you're expecting, you know, Tony from nowhere, Kansas, to fill up his water jug every day, not forget his, air mattress, like not drink coffee on the free day, like, like it's a lot of responsibility to be thrust upon you. And um, you got to keep in mind, like they're feeling that weight just as you're feeling the weight of like, oh, now I'm in charge of 100 kids, uh, either a similar age or a lower age before me. And in some cases, in some very particular cases, there may be people who are older than you. Um, and that can be difficult too, just building rapport and building respect. So just being it's very one thing that I really struggled with, that when I realized I was doing it helped me out, was just to wrap this thought up, you need to be consistently unbiased. Like you as a conflict mediator or as a resolver, or if you're part of the conflict, like you need to be consistent, not only in the way that you uh, treat others and yourself in this situation, you need to be consistent in how you resolve it. So like, if your friend is in the right and there's someone you don't really like who's in the wrong, like it will be subconsciously natural to like want to punish the person who's in the wrong more, because you don't have a good relationship with them when you're starting out. Like when you're first leading, like you have to fight that urge, and you will, and it comes with time. But when especially when you start, it definitely something to keep in mind.
I really agree with what you said earlier about like it's okay to be wrong and to admit that, because at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. It's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about finding the solution and working out the problems. And if if everyone can like get on that same level of, okay, I'm wrong and like I realize that now, so let's fix this and move on, and then things will be so much smoother.
I think too, like uh I kind of like talked about this a little, but um just like being willing to accept criticism, not only being willing to like say you're wrong, but like if someone's coming to you and saying, hey, I thought like your tone was really harsh when we were mediating, or you know um, this problem has been going on for a long time and you're just now getting to it, like this was like really affecting morale or something. Like if the constituency that you're serving is, and you need to keep it within reason, like if they're saying like, hey man, I really just don't understand why we don't, just get to like have soda in our water bottles. Like that's really hurting me that we can't do that. Like that's obviously not a realistic thing, like to engage with. That's the thing you can be like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah, I'll think about that, and you know, wherever it goes from there, that's where it goes. But if there's something about the way that you're, especially something that if it seems like so outlandish but it's also possible that you are doing it, that's really important. That is something you have to look at, especially tone or approach to a set of conflict mediation. That very, very important to be willing to, and Kelley mentioned this earlier too, just self-reflect and constantly adapt and be willing to accept criticism. And it's hard. I mean, like we, in DCI, Jack and I have both been flamed from over a stadium PA system in front of 150 people. Like it doesn't get easier, but you learn to live with it, and you learn to, and it really does. It helps you learn.
One thing that can help you, if you are one of the parties that's involved in a conflict, when you are hearing that criticism or when you're hearing what other people are saying, is echoing what they're saying back to them can be really helpful because it makes the other person feel as though their feelings are heard. Because everybody who wants to resolve conflict also wants to make sure that their point gets across. And I know this from the way I've dealt with parents who have complaints about some ways going, and that's not as. It's that other programs that I've been with, and I've observed other directors who have kind of used this strategy with parents who have complaints or qualms about the way that things are being done, and even if like we think the parent might not know everything about the situation and why we're doing the way we're doing, we still start with, so I'm hearing that this is what you're worried about. You're concerned that your kid's not getting PDQ for lunch and that you need better food at the catering service. I don't know. Echoing their feelings back to someone once they've expressed them is always a great place to start when you're hearing that criticism. If this is happening at the appropriate time, that wouldn't necessarily be a thing that Andy and Jack would say, when they're being flamed over the PA system. But if you're like having a one-on-one conversation with someone and they feel a certain type of way, the best way to kind of keep them moving forward into resolution, because they want to resolve that conflict as much as you do, but the best way to get them to move forward and move beyond their feelings and start to think about how like others might feel or other things that could be factored into whatever the conflict was, is to echo their feelings back to them, echo like what they're saying, say like, I think this might be why you're feeling this way, I understand, I just want to make sure I understand your point of view, and then at that point you can express maybe your point of view or another. I think once you've done that, you can start to maybe express and explain why things were done a certain way, or that might be your chance to apologize and find an opportunity to admit you're wrong, even if it was just one small thing and not the entire thing. That can go a long way into showing some humility and showing that you're thinking about other people, and that will help them be more willing to listen to you and respect you in the future, because you have demonstrated to them that you're truly listening and you know what they're saying and that you want to hear their concerns, and solve that conflict. So.
I know Sarah said before that, going into like conflicts like this, everyone in the group has good intentions. Like the reason this conflict is brought up is because they want it fixed. Our director Josh Hecht at DMLA, one thing that he always says is, in someone's story, oh, remind me how the saying goes. No one is the villain in their own story. That's the quote, and I really like that quote, and it's true. Coming into a conflict or when someone's approaching, no matter like what your opinion is on what their opinion is, they're coming to you because they're upset about something, and their feelings alone are valid, even if you think the issue shouldn't be an issue, or if you just have a different perspective on it. Obviously, whatever has or hasn't happened is affecting them.
Yeah, and once again, like another facet of this conversation that just all night could just like um the perception of the people that are having the conflict, like that, like especially if you haven't like dealt with conflict resolution before, like that's almost as important as dealing with the problem itself, because like if you're not in a positive light with the people that you're mediating, or that you're helping them mediate a discussion between themselves, you don't always have to be the mediator. um, if that's not a positive force there that's going on between everyone involved, that can really make things like take a turn for the worse. Um, and I'm sure a lot of people who are like, if this is like your first time being a drum major, like you may wonder why all of us have so many like nuanced thoughts about all of this, and it's because it happens all the time, um, and it's unavoidable. And in most systems, you're the person that gets to resolve all these conflicts. So when you were a member, you may have had one fight with the stupid freshman that wasn't on their dot, rah rah rah, like that's but that may have happened to you once. When you're the drum major or you're the section leader, that's happening to you like constantly. Like you are the one that are driving these solutions and helping get to the root cause of this. And like a quick example I like to like tell, like a little story, like especially for people not in the activity, just to understand just the complete like dedication you have to have, like inside, like on and off the field, especially in college or in DCI. This was from DCI. um, we were in New Hampshire, and there was a interstate right where our food truck was parked, and there was like a little footbridge above it. And Jack can attest, this housing site like was it was like haunted or something. Like there was a lot of shenanigans going on there. There was gravel on the field, and very thankful for the community for letting us be there and everything. But um, we had a rough go at it, and for sure. Like and we had some things to figure out and stuff. And I was so overwhelmed one day that because people during meal breaks, like when everyone else is relaxing, like you are going to be spoken to. Like you are still like going to have to engage with your ensemble, solve conflict, even do much more than anything, tie someone's shoes, like like everything. You are the person that all this slack. Once again, for everyone listening, all the other three just laugh because it's true. Like you are just the end all be all. So regardless, I crossed this interstate, like there was a footbridge, like I did it safely and everything. And I was like, all right, I was like, I can just eat my noodles. And I can just sit here alone. Like no one will talk to me. I made sure like no one was watching when I went over there, and I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at my phone or something, and like 5 minutes into being alone, a member like walks up to me and like starts talking to me about something, and there's a problem I have to solve. Like, and in my head I'm like, and I was like attentive and I was ready to solve the problem. In my head, that really just like cemented to me like this never ends. Like this is what's up with you. Like yeah, this it's part of your job. Part of what can alleviate that is establishing a hierarchy of who um, resolves what. So like at least like for legends, like it was, if you have a problem, take it to the section leader. If it doesn't get resolved there, the section leader takes it to the drum major. If the drum majors can't resolve it, it goes to caption heads. If caption heads can't resolve it, it goes like to admin. And I found that and recognizing that not every single thing is your issue, um, really helps like weed out the stuff that is like silly or stuff that's like truly not in your wheelhouse, and that can alleviate just so much pressure off of yourself, realizing that even though you are the person that's picking up all this slack and you are the end all be all for all these little piddly things throughout the day, like also at the end of the day, you literally can't do everything. Like if you focused on conflict resolution all day, you'd go, first off, you'd go nuts, and second off, you wouldn't even have time to sleep. Um, so just realizing how to manage your time, but also understanding that like it's a very important part of your role is all just critically important.
I think kind of going off of, like the different responsibilities of who deals with what. As a drum major, especially in high school, like you're usually the one in the middle of a lot of those conflicts, but it is so important to know, like, if it becomes a safety issue, like that goes right to a staff member or to a director. Like, even if it has, like, no one's been hurt yet, but if you hear, like, oh, someone is threatening this person, or, this person told another member that they're hurting themselves or like they're having suicidal thoughts or stuff. at that point, that's not like a mediate or like solve the conflict situation. That's a go to a staff member or go to the director right away. And then there are going to be situations for a lot of people where, all right, this is a safety issue right now. In college, of like way many years ago, before I was even the drum major, but a few years ago for our marching band season during band camp, there was a member of a different section who was very clearly intoxicated during an activity. And like the staff and the drum majors then had to bring that right to the higher up staff and the director to get that situation figured out. A situation like that where someone can be hurt, uh, the drum major or any leadership or any member in general, that's not your responsibility to deal with. That's your responsibility to let someone up high know, director or staff member.
I was so excited when Jack started talking because he read exactly what I was going to say. As someone who's going to be a band director, it's a hard nuance because I know as drum majors, we want to we know how busy our band directors are because we're kind of like assistant band directors in a way, and so we don't want to always feel like we're bothering them or bringing them down with our trivial problems. But like Jack was saying, if it becomes a safety issue, if there's like a lot of like discrimination happening, if there's like if the policies of your band or your school are being broken or of your corps, that absolutely needs to go to an adult. It's one thing that I always talk about. What great leaders do is they delegate, and so that manifests itself by you delegating down to section leaders or captains and making sure, like, if someone knows if they have a conflict within a section, they go to that person first and then they can come to you. But that also goes to you delegating things up the hierarchy if it's beyond the scope of what you should be responsible for. And so that's why it's really important for you to understand exactly what your band director or captain heads expect of you as a leader in your specific situation. Whether you're a drum major, whether you're a captain, or anything like in between, it's really important to know what the hierarchy is and make sure everybody else knows what that hierarchy is. Some things will skip up in the hierarchy, especially if it becomes like a safety issue or like a school rules being broken. So, love what Jack was saying. I totally agree.
Yeah, and this is definitely like something that is like a lay it out clear at the beginning of the season. Like get ahead of the game, make it crystal, and make it clear if anyone has any questions. Let them know who to ask. If that's you, if that's your director, um, like I have been in organizations where either like I didn't follow through in a part of that, or the organization didn't follow through in a part of that, particularly in high school. And like there was problems, even with me. Like there was problems that certain people had with me that I didn't know until 2 months after the season ended. And when they told me, I was I was honestly humiliated. I was so embarrassed. I was like, I cannot believe that I was doing this, and I was so unaware of it. That's what was so embarrassing. Is like, wow, how did I not realize I was doing this and it was affecting so many people? And then I was annoyed and frustrated that no one told me, because like how are you gonna solve something so catastrophic if you're not speaking to the people? So just be sure everyone knows the way these relationships flow, um, and just you guys all, everyone in this call knows what I'm saying. Like there are certain things you wish you would have been told a long time ago, and that translates to the people that you're mediating. Like there are things, tough conversations that need to be had that are going to better that person and the organization. And holding off on it because it's uncomfortable, or because it's inconvenient, or you don't feel like doing it that day, really does more harm than good. If it's an appropriate conversation for you to have, once again, this is something you need to speak with your director about. The issue that I was facing was something that anyone could have told me. Like, I really should have been slapped in the face and told to straighten up. But once again, yeah, resolving a conflict 2 weeks after these people aren't interacting with each other anymore helps no one. So be sure you're dealing with things in a timely fashion, as is required.
And one way that you can do that is by actively checking in with your members and seeing what conflicts they have ahead of time, or before they even become conflicts, they're just like irritations, or just like having a core group of people that you can go to that can be like, hey, are there any things that you're hearing about me that I can improve on or are causing problems for anyone? And then going back to like specifically checking in on people, being like, hey, how are you doing? Um, like how are things going, and like if they are like, oh well, this is bothering me, like, okay, what can I do to help, how can I make this not become a conflict? And like I said before, just like showing you care is going to really put their like trust and respect in you to be able to go to you if something were to escalate or something comes up.
On the topic of communication, I think the best way to begin, a meeting with someone about conflict resolution, which you should always try to do those in person or over like a video call if you can. There's so much communication that happens non-verbally that is really, really important. Or even just in the tone of your voice is so important. It's so easy for things to get, for nuances of feelings and emotions to get lost when you do these over text message or email or whatever you do, Snapchat. So try to meet in person. I believe the best way to start a conflict resolution conversation is to start with a shared value. So that's an opportunity for you to look back at the values of your program, whether if your school band has a mission statement or if they have like a saying or a motto. Or I know for the Carolina band, our 3 core values are spirit, community, and performance, in that order specifically. So if you start with a core value and say like, okay, we both value a high level of performance, and we both know that a rehearsal environment where people aren't talking after they get to their dots, a rehearsal environment where things go really fast and you feel like 2 hours goes by super quick. We both know that those are the best kinds of rehearsals that lead to really great performances, and we all want to be confident on the field, and that's when you can go to say like, sometimes like, if that person's talking a lot during sets, that might be a way you start off that conversation by starting with that shared value. So you got to find something that you and the other parties hold in common, or if you're the mediator, that can be a great way to start things too. Like say, can we all agree that we value this? We value a positive rehearsal environment. We value positivity. We value performing really well. Whatever it is, and I think I'm really into mission statements and vision statements and mottos and core values. And so if that's not a conversation that you've had with your leadership team and your director, that needs to be something that you can start. And I know that even at USC, our mission and vision statements and the core value statements, those only came into being like 2 or 3 years ago, and our band is 100 years old. So if you haven't had that opportunity to talk about those things with your director, with your leadership team, or with honestly the whole band, now's a great time to do that before the season starts. So when conflict happens, because it will, you can start those conversations with a shared value, or shared values plural, because then we both know we're coming from the same place, and everybody wants to solve the conflict. We know where we're coming from, we know where we want to be, and then there's all the nuances of how to get there that we've already talked about. Forget about being right, look for a root cause, echo your feelings back to you, find an opportunity to admit you were wrong, all those things. But you have to start somewhere where you both agree. You have to figure out, like, we both are here right now, we both want to be here, and then the rest will happen along the way as it should. So if you use the strategies that we've suggested, and there's so much more that we haven't talked about still.
Yeah, perfectly put. We're all on the same team, but we're all on the same. I mean, even DMLA, like the teamwork here, it's just so interesting to see the dynamic when you have a group of people who have experienced this, and it can be hard to translate that to your members when you're the one that's going through it. But we've all gone through it. Everyone on the DMLA team has gone through it, and just the ease of being able to resolve conflicts when people are aware of these tools and are aware of each other and are aware and are already trying to have a positive outlook on everything. Like, it's truly astounding. Like, you will never be more productive than when you can squash beef the moment it starts. Speaking of 2 hour rehearsal flying by, this has flown by. Wow, what a good, uh, really just laid it out real nice. And like Kelley said, and like I've said multiple times, this is the tip of the iceberg, like the tip of the tip of the iceberg. Like, if you Google like conflict resolution tools, like you could go to page 100 and I'm sure there'd still be good results. So, you know, I hope what us four have said has resonated with some of you. But if you feel like there's something missing, speak to your director, speak to other people in leadership roles, do your own research, look things up. Like, there are resources out there, and just prepare yourself. The best way for you to learn, it will happen to you. It will happen to you. You are going to fail. Like, that's just the long and short of it. And the way you get back from that is really gonna, help define the future of your conflict resolution skills. So just be very self-aware. And I think let's go round once more. What is when you think conflict resolution, the most important part of it? We've talked about a lot. Um, we'll just go down the line. I'm going to double down. You have to know truly what is going on in the situation, because some people, maybe, once again, like we discussed, everyone like has a different view on the story, but there may be some stuff that is just not happening, that is being perceived to be being happening. So get the facts. When you're mediating, get the facts. Kelley?
All parties want to be heard in terms of conflict resolution. So, um, create whatever kind of role you're playing in conflict resolution. Create a space where each party can share their feelings, echo their feelings back to them, and forget about being right about the situation, because everybody's going to have bias, even you. I feel like there's no way to really avoid that, because people have backgrounds and different personalities and different behaviors, and that's okay. But create a space where people feel comfortable sharing, and make sure that everybody in the situation feels like they're being heard, so that you have an opportunity to show them how to move forward.
I think not throwing out any accusations, but more so, instead of saying, you have this problem you need to fix, say, hey, how can we fix this issue? Or, if it's like a full band thing, like, hey, we didn't have a great rehearsal tonight. Like, we're better than that. We can be better tomorrow, yeah? Just, tackling the problem and not the person.
And then kind of going off of that, um, assume good intentions and show your care through your words and your actions, um, to best resolve the conflict. Because no one wants to listen to what you have to say if you're like if you're just like mean to them as well. Like, you're just creating more conflict. Like, if they know that there's a reason behind what you're doing and what you're saying, they're more likely to listen to you, especially if you show them you care.
Very well put by all three of you. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for you three for being here, Kelley, Sarah, and Jack. Very productive conversation. I hope this finds some of you well. I hope, honestly, this is eye-opening for some people who haven't really spent a lot of time thinking about this, or if this scares you. Now your foot is in the door. Now open the door. Get into it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening or watching. If you have any suggestions for a future podcast episode, feel free to email me at podcast at dmlatraining.com. That's it for now, and we will be back in 2 weeks with our next episode. Thanks, everyone.